Tihei mauri ora. O mai meira ki a tātou te opu o tātou mana pua pua. A rāra te kina te umu pū o ngā anu katoa te katotanga. E repu ai ki tua o mā te uku. Tere no tātou hua ki tua o kuareare. Puru ana ki ke te nui, ki ke te ro, ki pāmamao e. Tihei mauri ora ki te tai ao, tihei mauri ora ki o tātou tūpona. Ko mau kai te maunga tū meira, te whare whakaruru, te whare kōrero, e kore riro. Ko waitiro hia te aua e rere rā, te mata pono o te ora, e kore maroke. Ko rakai pāka te iwi o rātou mā, e kore, e ngaro.
Hi, I'm Becky Meagher, and welcome to Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. That was Brendan Sweetman. I want to welcome you to Transitions, and this show is all about transitions in your life. And I'd like to use the metaphor of triathlons. First you swim, then you get to the transition area, then you run, and transitions again, and you also bike in there too. So we want to talk about how transitions help us and change us throughout our lives. And Brendan Sweetman is our guest today. Welcome, Brendan.
Kia ora. Kia ora ki au koe.
Tell us, that was a prayer that you just said. Mm-hmm. And your background, just to give everybody an idea, you have relatives in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. Your background is New Zealand. You are in Nashville. Right now you do what a lot of people call rolfing. Yes, you also own a company that teaches swimming. And you have the most fascinating background. You were a model. So could you, we're going to be doing 2 shows, by the way. The second show will actually demonstrate what he physically does to his patients to work on their bodies. But we want to know more about you and your background. So take us back. Where were you born, and how is New Zealand encompassed in your life? And the prayer that you, tell us about the prayer that you just started about.
Well, first the prayer. When Māori speak, they speak through their whole being. They speak through their whole wairua, their whole spirit.
And that is the native New Zealand tribe? Is that the way you say it?
Those are the, like we have Native American Indian, the First Nation people of America. Mm-hmm. Māori are the first people of New Zealand that inhabited New Zealand some thousands of years ago, even going back older than what we know in history books today, which has a lot of flaws to it. But what was it?
So you began, did you start out in New Zealand, or your parents are from New Zealand, or how did you get to?
My family's from New Zealand. My father, my mother and father met at Otago University.
At where?
At Otago University in the South Island of New Zealand. My father, all throughout his life, he has got the IQ of Albert Einstein. He is totally amazing, incredible. He got job offers in almost 50 of the United States, right?
Is he American?
No, he's a New Zealander. He's in New Zealand. He's my family. I don't have any family in America. All of my family is from New Zealand, except for my immediate family now. I have a boy, Rangitu Waho, Jack Rakai Paka Sweetman. That's my boy. He's 10 years old, and my girl is, her name, we call her Maya, but her name is Te Maya o Te Marae Whenua, which, and she is 7 years old. So my father was a brain box. He was a chemist, and he he got a job offer to come to America back in the mid to late 60s, and he worked at Vanderbilt University, and he's retired now. But you know, my father actually discovered prostaglandins D2, which is a hormone in the body, and you know, amongst many other things, he was on the board for he was on the counseling board who decided to say humans should have an aspirin a day. That's that type of thing. And when my mother and father met at Otago University, my mother was leading the Kapahaka group, which is Maori dance, and she was training to be a teacher. So she was a teacher, and this led them into to Union, this meeting, and then they moved to America, and my mother is where I've learned most of what I know in relation to my teaching. I've been teaching for over 35 years, and that's to be humble in those years. I've actually been teaching a lot longer than that, and we own the oldest swim program in Nashville today. And my mother runs her business, my brother has a business in Murfreesboro, and I have a business in Mount Juliet.
Wow. So, in other words, your parents moved to Nashville because of Vanderbilt.
Because
right?
of Vanderbilt University.
So you were raised in Nashville?
I was raised in Nashville, but I've spent half my life in New Zealand, half my life in America, and I would go backwards and forwards, especially in my teenage years, going into my 20s, I would go backwards and forwards because being brought up in a swimming family, I started getting involved in long distance swimming. So I would swim like 13 to 15 mile races. I would do races in the ocean just to push myself, because from an extremely young age, my goal was a couple of things. I wanted to be an actor, but then I was stage fright. So, I kind of went away from that, but I seemed to have the ability to speak. And then I decided I was going to, from a young age, I trained in martial arts.
Was that as a teenager?
No, that was as a very young kid. I used to walk with my gi on, going to my dojo to be with the master. There was something I think that was connected with me from very past times, this momaharatanga kei roto, this memory inside of having that teacher master relationship that I kind of connected with, which led me into this desire to, okay, I'm going to go be like Bruce Lee. I'm going to go live in China. I'm going to learn all about Qigong, from a very young age. So this really, you can see how this has evolved into what I do today.
So that the kind of alternative energy with martial arts started as a kid, but
Definitely.
Then, as a child, did you go to New Zealand and you speak the New Zealand language? Did you learn that as a child too? So you're going back and forth.
I learned some as a child, but I have a couple of people, and one of my Auntie Liz Hunkin, who lives in our small, what's called our Turanga Waiwai, which is our stomping grounds of our tribe. She lives in the village there, and she taught me how to speak Maori from what I know today.
Okay.
And I learned that more in a semi-fluent way as more of an adult. I mean, if I can go on to say, we have to understand in my mother's period and before that, with colonization coming to New Zealand, our people were told they were made to feel ashamed.
Just like the American Indians.
Just like the American Indians. They were made to feel ashamed of speaking their own language. But there are pockets throughout the Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. That's the Māori name for New Zealand. That still stayed tututu. They still stayed original. They still stayed in the languages themselves. But there were a lot of people that had to change in the coming times. They had to change, and I think there was a lot of fear behind it. But now, even Lakota Indian now, a lot of them go and they use the framework of our Ta'atarangi, our language courses, to teach Indian in America today how to speak their languages, and it's really beautiful. There's no rights, there's no wrongs. It's sitting down, it's open heart, and it's moving from that place that we learn how to korero Māori.
Wow.
Speak Māori.
Let me ask you, so there we are, let's say you're in middle school, you're doing martial arts, somehow you got into swimming. Is swimming something that your whole family got into, and were you a swimmer in high school, and then did you go on to college?
I did not go on to college because I swam as a youngster. I did not do it in college because I was thinking, I was a hurdlist, I was a decathlete, and I was thinking of going to university and doing that. But then something just said, nope, I need to follow in the path of my ancestors. So that kind of led. I spent the next 18, 20 years just living solely and coming back to do races here in America, in New Zealand, and from there. You know, I went to design school. I learned how to design clothes, and
was that in New Zealand?
That was in New Zealand, and I opened. That was part of me opening up on a totally different level. I had the level of creativity from the clothes design, and I also had this whole nother opening of Pandora's box through my tupuna, my ancestors, and being in that environment, and actually one of the you know, our people were so incredibly powerful. We had what's called wharewananga, schools of learning, and some of the things they could do by location. They could use their energy to do many different things. And one of my first experiences with the power of that is this is called a hay tiki here, and I had a hook on made of whalebone, and at that time it disappeared. And sometimes if people have a kororo or they say something about your taonga, your sacred items, they can hide themselves. This thing disappeared from me, and I was in a field by myself, and I felt this amazing explosion in my pocket, and I looked in my pocket, and it had returned to me, but I was fretting because this thing meant the connection we have with our sacred items is very, 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 very dear to us, and it's very strong. So. But it wasn't only given back to me. When it was given back to me, all of the cord, this is muka made from kiakia, a native thing we have in our trees in New Zealand, and it was wrapped, intricately knotted all the way around the whole taonga, whole sacred piece of hook there. So it led me into, there's no way anybody in that space of time could ever intricately knot in the 5 or 7 or 10 minutes that it could happen. So it started making me delve into what is time, what is space, what is true in that realm. Do we have the ability to go outside of that place, you know, and being strengthened by what I had been learning about my tupuna, which are my ancestors, it was like a really a strong wake-up call, which led me and people being around me to do the work that I do today. In everything that I've done, from teaching from a young age to doing all the creative stuff in design, to all of the rolfing that I do today, and healing work, which I've done for more than a quarter of a century now. I couldn't have done it without all of that, a culmination of all of those things being put together. So,
well, you had, it sounds like the spiritual experience with the what did you call it? Like, not a totem.
Taonga.
Taonga. You had this experience, and at that time, were you designing clothes? And did you have an aha moment? I was like, I don't no longer want to design clothes. I want to become a healer. Was there an aha moment to go in that direction? Was it sudden, or did you just go, okay, now I want to learn about healing? It sounds like tell us about that. How did that change?
Yeah, I think it was a transition. There was aha moments along the way which led more to the speeding of that transition from one to the other. But I started to look at my life, and I started thinking I really love the creativity of what I'm doing, and I thought about designing a lot of Maori indigenous, using recycled stuff in New Zealand, using all of those to really support our people with messages to the world about who we are, that type of thing. And the stress of having to sit over, because I not only designed clothes, I pattern made them. I drew them, I pattern made them, I sewed them, I did everything.
You sewed them.
I did.
You physically sewed them.
I physically sewed them. Right. I did all of this stuff, and it started being stressful to me, and then meditation, which happened as a child when I was doing martial arts, started to come back to me in a strong way, and I started hearing and feeling the little taps, and they started to be synchronistic with what was going on in my life. And the more I started opening up to that message, the more I was able to let go of one and move into the other.
Well, I guess the clothes thing was in New Zealand.
Yes.
Were you bouncing back and forth between America and New Zealand doing the clothes thing also?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
In fact, you know, if I can say,
yes. Yes.
you know what, we've taught, my family has taught thousands and thousands of people in Nashville and around the world. People come to us for our lessons. We run the oldest swim program.
For the swimming, okay.
For the swimming.
We're not talking about clothing, we're talking about swimming now.
But what I was going to say is when I came back, I was teaching a lot of country music stars, and I thought about taking.
To swim?
No, I taught their kids how to swim, but I was in the right place to start designing clothes for country music people.
Oh.
But Waidua Spirit wanted me to do something else, so that's what I did.
So when you started to do body work, okay, was it a slow transition? I'll do some body work, I'm still designing clothes, or how did that? You know, I understand the tap on your shoulder, but how did that start, and who's trained you to do body work?
I've had many people that have trained me to do body work, not only in the physical but in spiritual. So. And what was the other part of your question?
Well, I'm just wondering, was there a certain time that you said, okay, I'm not, a break, I'm not going to do design clothes, but I want to do body work, and when did that happen? And were you in America? Were you in New Zealand?
I was actually in New Zealand, and I had a friend of mine who was a physiotherapist. That's really what got me started in body work, and also seeing a lot of my old people doing body work on themselves around our village in Nuhaka, seeing people doing body work and hearing about this ancient style of body work. So it kind of started from there. But being a triathlete, as you would know, you tend to have ails in your body.
Yes.
So, you know, my first experience with body work was straight through the envelope to a level of pain where I thought, okay, this is intense, but it helped. It helped.
I mean, somebody was working on you.
Somebody was working on me.
Your muscles were sore because you were a triathlete.
Exactly. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Gotcha.
And from there, it led me into learning about energy, learning about how things. And I would take frequent trips to Momokai, which is our mountain, and I have land looking out to this beautiful sacred place where which our tribal leader from hundreds and hundreds of years ago is buried up there. I would go up there and I would be given information about our whole area, and some of this information nobody knew. So that led me into going deeper into the energy realm, and then into okay, we have this energy body, but we have a physical body as well, and being able to mold both of those together to be able to see through the body, in the body, structurally look at the body, but energetically look at the body at the same time. So in saying, I need to say that for me personally, I owe this to my tupuna, and I owe this to all of my whānau, my family back home, because without that, I don't think I would be where I'm at. The aroha, the love that they have for each other, although, you know, we have little squabbles here and there, there's still a common bond because we are all related and connected with each other. That in itself is heart opening. And when the heart opens, we have the ability to understand and process information like the healing work on a deeper level.
Well, and we're going to have a second show that he's going to demonstrate some of this physically, what he does too. But to it's Ida Rolf that started this, and can you explain in a short time what the series is? You start from one part of the body to the other, and when you're working on people, is there also a spiritual component? Are you kind of figuring from ancestors, from the person who's on your table? Is that coming to you? Explain that.
Yeah. From Ida Rolf's perspective, she definitely did that. She could look straight through the body, but I think that's personal to each practitioner. For me, having the background I've had and going into Rolfing, there's definitely the ability to do the energetic aspect that I've learned way before I started being a Rolfer. The Rolfing, or structural integration, as I learned it, is about taking people through what's called a recipe or a 10 series, which addresses superficial to deep in the body. And you know, we take people through a 10 series, and each session we work on specific things, not to compartmentalize the body, because wherever we're working, our intention is throughout the whole body. Our attention is not only throughout the whole body, it's throughout all of the tissues, even if we're working on the superficial layer. Energetically, we're going into those other areas to allow the body to be able to open up. And if I can give an analogy of a telescope, and you have the telescope closed, and you open that telescope up in all these different layers that you have within that telescope, imagine the body like that, without every single layer going superficial to deep, is addressed in that process, and it gives people a vertical line for them to be able to walk off of, for us to really look at, are we conscious in our body? Do we have the ability to be conscious? Do we have the ability to breathe into our body? Do we have the ability to allow our pelvis to just rest down, to walk the way we need to be able to sit correctly, to be able to be led through the top of our head, and also through Rangi Nui, Father Sky, to be grounded through Papatuanuku, our Mother Earth, and to allow that core to be able to come around it, rather than moving from one holding pattern to a next, which most people tend to walk it like.
Right. So if somebody is 80 years old compared to 18, and their muscles have been this way for so long, can you help them?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. And as I understand it, it's the movement of the fascia, is that correct?
That is
correct. Okay, which is, somebody described to me, is if you think of a chicken, and is that clear stuff when you're in the chicken skin, it's underneath there. Is that kind of a good way to say it?
Yeah, and like if somebody came for the first 3 sessions, you imagine yourself putting a wetsuit on now, as we know, being triathletes, putting a wetsuit on, especially in cold water. You think of that wetsuit as a superficial layer. You're working in that layer of wetsuit, or that layer of tissue, and that would be what your analogy about the chicken. So you're working in that layer, but there's many, many other layers within the body. There's physical layers, and then there's layers that your allopathic medicine cannot see. There's energetic layers in the body. There's energetic layers connected to our energy field, connected to maybe tumors that have the ability to be able to come into the body to create diseasement within the body. There's all of those things that, if a practitioner is trained in that regard, can work with and deal with, and still be able to help the person on the table who may not understand what you're doing.
Right.
And depending on the person is depending on how much information you give them, because at the end of the day, you want to get people out of their head and into their heart.
Right, and I know some friends of mine who you've worked on, and you worked on me in the past, being a triathlete and going, I have this pain, but it also can bring up trauma. trauma that happened maybe as a kid, or and there is a release of that, you know, whether through crying or not understanding, and then that release, and you go through it and become better. Do you see a lot of that also?
I see a lot of that, and you know, not everything that we have in our body and the way we hold ourselves and the way we move is conscious. So you start getting into certain things and people will start crying, and I don't know why I'm crying, and I say it doesn't matter why you're crying, or if I see something, I may, if the time is right, I may say something to them about what I saw in relation to that. But there are also times, because people become so hard in their body, especially men, and the way we've been brought up, that you will be working in their body, and matakiti is being able to see different parts of their self. You may see them crying. You may feel the sadness in that person, and then you say, "What are you feeling?" "I'm not feeling anything." So, you know, you look at this, it may go back to their childhood. It may go back to their childhood from something that happened in their childhood where they had to block themselves off and they had to not feel, and yet they're an adult and they're moving through their life and they're going to their 9-to-5 job, and yet what's happening is that little part of themselves is still not being heard, and it's unconscious and they don't know it.
Right. Well, this is such a rich, rich subject. And we have just a few more minutes here. And then I want to remind everybody we have number 2 show, which will really get into even more of this. And we're also going to talk more also about your swimming part, which is also fascinating.
Yoda.
But if, do you have any wise words if someone wants to try Rolfing, structural integration? Would you have any caution, or just say, just do it, to our audience out there?
You know, when people come to Rolfing, they'll say the reason why a lot of people won't want to do it is because they're scared of the pain of it. But then again, that's that unconscious little thing inside of us. It's that pain. So when we can really be strong in ourselves and go through that, we'll see that there's something other than pain that's there. When we can meet that, because it's really fear speaking, it's not our true self. Our true self wants us to heal, but it is that other part of ourself which holds us back from moving forward.
Right.
So in that other part of themselves in that time, although the man may go to work from 9 to 5, right? He may go to work from 9 to 5 and he may not know it, but in that moment, when he has to do something like that, he or she has to do something like that, that little part that was unconscious generally speaks up and say, "No, that's just too painful for me."
Right. Well, Brendan Sweetman, we have run out of time. Look for number 2. And thank you very much for being with us. Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. And we have more. Thank you.